Dr. Emily Parker's fingers hovered over the translation matrix as the alien message continued to stream across her holographic display. The emergency lights of the United Nations Security Council chamber cast harsh shadows across the faces of world leaders gathered before her. Outside, the massive Krax vessels loomed in the morning sky, their crystalline hulls refracting sunlight into prismatic patterns across New York's skyline. "Verification complete," she announced, her voice steadier than she felt. The message repeats across all frequencies. There, she swallowed hard. They're not here to negotiate. The Krax transmission resumed, its mechanical translation filling the chamber. Your species has demonstrated sufficient martial capability in your internal conflicts. The hegemony requires warriors for the greater expansion. You will provide 10 million soldiers within one Earth orbital period. Resistance will result in planetary sterilization. Compliance will be rewarded with technological elevation after victory. Secretary General Thomas Richardson leaned forward, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic displays. "Dr. Parker, your assessment of their language patterns." Emily zoomed in on specific segments of the alien text. Their linguistic structure suggests absolute certainty. They're not threatening us. They're informing us of what they consider an inevitable outcome. She highlighted several glyphing patterns. However, there's something else. The way they reference our military history. There's an undertone of fear. Colonel James Martinez interrupted from his position near the chamber's entrance. The Special Forces veteran stepped forward, his combat dress uniform standing out among the suits and formal wear. "They've been watching us, studying our wars. They're not impressed by our technology." He gestured to the swirling alien text. "They're impressed by our capacity for warfare itself." The Chinese ambassador scoffed. What could possibly frighten a species capable of interstellar travel? "Our adaptability," Martins answered. "Look at how warfare evolved just in the past century. From trenches to drones to cyber warfare. We don't just fight wars. We transform through them. Each conflict changes us, makes us more efficient." He turned to Emily. "Doctor, how long have they been watching us?" She quickly scrolled through the data packets. Based on their historical references, at least 70 years. They have detailed analyses of everything from World War II through our most recent conflicts. The Russian representative stood, his face flushed. "Then they know our nuclear capabilities. Why aren't they concerned?" Emily shook her head. "Their ship's energy readings suggest shields that could shrug off our entire arsenal. But," she frowned, double-checking her findings, "they devote an unusual amount of attention to our ground warfare innovations. They seem particularly focused on our rapid technological adaptation during conflicts." Secretary General Richardson surveyed the room. "Options? We don't have any," the British ambassador stated flatly. "Their ships control every strategic orbital position. One strike could end us." Martinez stepped closer to the central display. "We have one option. We give them exactly what they want." A series of messages flashed across his tactical pad. "I'm already receiving reports from military commands worldwide. We can meet their numbers. 10 million soldiers." The French representative looked aghast. "We'd be sending them to die." "No," Martins countered, something dangerous glinting in his eyes. "We'd be sending them to learn." He turned to Emily. "Doctor, you said they promise technological elevation after victory. Does their language suggest they intend to keep that promise?" Emily nodded slowly. "Yes, their society appears rigidly hierarchical. Breaking such a promise would violate their cultural norms. Then we have our path forward." Martinez's fingers flew across his tactical display. "We give them their soldiers. We let them think they're getting cannon fodder. But we select carefully: engineers, scientists, tacticians, and survivors. People who can observe, adapt, and improvise." The Secretary General studied Martinez for a long moment. "You're suggesting we treat this demand as an opportunity for infiltration. I'm suggesting we give humanity a fighting chance." Martinez straightened. "They think they're drafting soldiers. Instead, they're giving us access to their technology, their tactics, and their weaknesses. They want warriors. A grim smile crossed his face. Let's show them why humans are the most dangerous species they could have chosen. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Above them, the Crack's ships continued their ominous vigil, unaware that their demand for soldiers had just planted the seeds of their own eventual defeat. Private Jessica Thompson wiped condensation from her faceplate, cursing the Crack's environmental systems for the 100th time that day. The alien battlecruiser Eternal Dominion maintained an atmosphere more suited to its native crew. Warm, humid, and slightly acidic, her standard-issue combat suit, hastily modified with Crack's technology, barely managed to compensate. "Check your seals, people," Lieutenant Michael Anderson's voice crackled through the squad comm. "These corridors are going to get worse before they get better." Jessica double-checked her retrofitted plasma rifle, the weapon comically oversized for human hands. The Cracks hadn't bothered providing properly scaled equipment, expecting their human troops to make do with cast-off gear. Their arrogance was about to cost them. "Boarding action in 5, Anderson announced. "Remember your training, and remember what Colonel Martinez said. Observe everything." The deployment bay hummed with energy as 20 human soldiers prepared for combat. They were officially designated as Expendable Support Unit 247. The Cracks didn't even bother giving them a proper name. Unofficially, they called themselves Anderson's Adapters. A violent shudder ran through the ship. Enemy contact. The Cracks' command channel blared with alien sounds that their translators rendered into clipped mechanical English, deploying primitive auxiliaries. Jessica felt the familiar lurch of the launch tube. Her pod shot through space, electromagnetic fields guiding it toward the hull breach of a rival alien vessel. The targeting system, designed for Crack's reflexes, bombarded her with data at nearly incomprehensible speeds. "Systems overload," Private Rodriguez called out. "These damn displays error. Switch to basic targeting." Jessica interrupted, fingers flying across her rifle's control panel. "Remember what I showed you. Disconnect the neural feed and run it through the manual sight." During their brief training period, she discovered that human eyes could track targets more efficiently than the overcomplicated Crack systems if you bypassed their superior technology. The pod slammed into the enemy ship. Jessica's modified harness absorbed the impact better than the original Crack's design, another small improvement she'd made. The breach door burst open, and Anderson's adapters poured into the corridors. "Contact front," Anderson shouted. "Enemy forces advancing." Jessica's world narrowed to the space between heartbeats. The rival aliens, some species she couldn't pronounce, charged forward with energy shields and plasma weapons. Their tactics followed textbook Crack's doctrine: overwhelming force in rigid formations. "They're using standard Crack's patterns," Jessica called out, "exploiting gap in 3-2. She rolled beneath an energy blast, the movement impossible in original Crack's armor, but perfectly executed in her modified suit. The enemy, expecting the slower coordinated movements taught by Crack's commanders, hadn't anticipated human agility. Jessica's plasma rifle barked twice, the recoil absorbed by her boot-laced cooling system. 2 enemy soldiers fell. "Push the advantage," Anderson ordered. "Show them what humans can do." The squad moved like water through the enemy formation, exploiting gaps that Crack's tactical doctrine considered too small to matter. Jessica's modified weapons sang, her primitive cooling solution allowing for sustained fire that should have been impossible with their outdated equipment. Within minutes, the enemy forces retreated in disarray. Jessica quickly collected discarded weapons and tech, following standing orders to gather intelligence. Each piece would be studied, improved, and adapted to human use. "Impressive performance, primitives," the Crack's commander's translated voice held a note of surprise. "Return to deployment bay for inspection. Check your suit recordings," Anderson vocalized through their private channel. "Everyone get that data uploaded to Lieutenant Hayes before inspection. Especially you, Thompson." That cooling mod of yours just proved its worth." Jessica smiled grimly behind her faceplate. The cracks would inspect their equipment, but they'd never understand what they were seeing. To them, the bootlesses holding coolant tubes in place were signs of primitive desperation. They'd never realized they were watching the first steps of a revolution. "All units, fall back in standard formation," Anderson commanded loudly for the cracks observers. But on their private channel, he added, "Another successful test. Adapters. Keep watching. Keep learning. Keep improving. They think they're throwing us into battle. They're actually giving us a crash course in their weaknesses." As they marched back to their deployment bay, Jessica felt the weight of the stolen tech in her modified storage compartments. The cracks wanted soldiers. Instead, they were creating the architects of their own defeat, one battle at a time. Major Robert Wilson crouched in the maintenance shaft of the cracks battleship Sovereign Might, watching alien patrol patterns through a gap in the paneling. His Wildcat squad had turned these overlooked spaces into their greatest advantage. The cracks, with their rigid schedules and need for climate-controlled rest pods, never thought to check the uncomfortable crawl spaces that humans could adapt to sleeping in. "Movement on Grid 7, whispered Sergeant Sarah Miller through their modified comm system. The cracks had given them basic communicators, but combat engineer Ashley Cooper had rebuilt them with parts scavenged from destroyed enemy weapons. The new versions operated on frequencies the aliens considered too unstable for reliable communication. "Confirm patrol size," Wilson subvocalized, the throat mic picking up the faintest vibration. 3 heavies, 2 support. Standard overconfident formation." Miller's voice held a hint of amusement. "They still haven't adjusted to last week's ambush pattern." Wilson checked his chronometer. 6 months into their forced service, and the cracks still hadn't realized how thoroughly humans were studying their every move. His squad had mapped every patrol route, noted every shift change, and documented every tactical response in their sector. "Cooper, status on their targeting systems." "Fascinating stuff, sir." Cooper's voice crackled with barely contained excitement. "Their entire combat doctrine is built around their species' natural reaction time. They've never compensated for anything faster." Wilson smiled in the darkness. Cooper had been a civilian robotics engineer before the draft. Now she was revolutionizing their understanding of cracks technology. "Explain it simple for the ground pounders, Cooper." "They're too perfect," she replied. "Every targeting system, every automated defense, they're all calibrated to counter precise, calculated movements. They literally can't track human instinctive responses. We're too random, too quick to adapt." "That's why the close combat simulations always felt off," Miller added. "Remember those first training sessions? Their combat robots kept overshooting." Wilson checked his modified sensor pack. The cracks patrol was approaching their position, following the same route they'd used for the past 3 months. The aliens' dedication to routine was both admirable and devastatingly predictable. Time to test Cooper's theory. "All units, prepare for Operation Bedtime Story." His squad acknowledged with clicks rather than words. They'd learned early that silence was their ally in these metal corridors. 20 humans lay hidden throughout the maintenance network, waiting to demonstrate why insomnia could be a tactical advantage. The patrol passed beneath Wilson's position. He counted silently. 3, 2, 1. "Sweet dreams," he whispered. Modified stun grenades, another of Cooper's innovations, dropped from multiple maintenance hatches simultaneously. The cracks troops reacted exactly as their training dictated, raising shields in a textbook defensive formation. But Cooper had been right. Their automated systems, expecting calculated attacks, couldn't track the seemingly chaotic pattern of the falling devices. The electromagnetic pulse that followed was specifically calibrated to their armor frequency. The cracks hadn't bothered changing their default shield harmonics in centuries. Why would they? No primitive species had ever bypassed them before. "All units, clean takedown," Wilson ordered as his squad descended from their hiding spots. Remember, we're just simple humans struggling with their superior technology. Cooper, get what you need from their armor before the backup patrol arrives. The engineer was already connecting diagnostic tools to the disabled crack suits. Each failed mission gave them more data, more understanding of the technology. They were supposed to be too primitive to comprehend. "Sir," Miller called out softly, "next patrol's due in 7 minutes. And..." She hesitated. "Command's starting to notice our survival rate." Wilson nodded as he helped secure their unconscious prisoners. "Let them notice. The Crack's commanders will do what they always do. Assign us more difficult missions, hoping to prove their superiority. And we'll do what humans always do. Adapt and overcome," Cooper suggested, pocketing a stolen Shield harmonics module. "Learn and evolve," Wilson corrected. "They think they're wearing us down. Instead, they're teaching us everything we need to know to beat them. Now let's disappear before shift change. I hear there's a nice maintenance shaft on Deck 7 that's perfect for a nap." His squad moved quickly, erasing all evidence of their presence. Above them, the Crack's ship continued its patrol routes, its commanders unaware that their most expendable troops were becoming their most dangerous enemies. Kyle Roberts wiped engine grease from his hands with a rag that had once been part of his formal military uniform. The former NASCAR mechanic turned reluctant soldier stared at the holographic diagnostic display floating above the Crack's engine core. After 6 months of routine maintenance, he'd finally figured out why these supposedly advanced engines felt so sluggish. "They're bottlenecking the plasma flow," he muttered to himself, habit from long nights in race car pits. Running the same protocols they probably wrote 1,000 years ago. The engine room of the Eternal Victory hummed around him, its alien surfaces reflecting the blue glow of plasma conduits. The Crack's engineers had long since learned to ignore the primitive human assigned to basic maintenance. Their mistake. "Roberts." Captain Jennifer Hayes's voice came through his modified earpiece, disguised as a standard translator. "Status report." "You're not going to believe this, Hap." Kyle traced a finger through the hologram, highlighting subsystems. "Remember how Earth engineers had to redesign fuel injection systems every few years to match new engine types? Focus, Roberts. We have 3 minutes until shift change." "Right, sorry." He glanced at the Crack's engineers across the room, still absorbed in their traditional maintenance rituals. They never adapted. They found one way to run these engines and stuck with it. For centuries, maybe longer. A moment of silence. Potential. Kyle grinned. "Give me 2 weeks, and I can boost efficiency by 40%. Maybe more. They're running these beauties like lawnmowers when they should be treating them like Formula One cars." Proof of concept. Already done. He transmitted the data through their secure channel. "I modified the auxiliary power unit in Section 7. Small enough that they won't notice, but it's running at nearly double efficiency." "Impressive." Hayes paused. "Implementation plan." Kyle watched a Crack's engineer perform the same system check they'd done every day since he'd arrived. They never questioned their maintenance protocols. "I can make the changes look like routine updates. They'll think their engines are just running smoother because of their superior technology." Timeline. 2 days for the critical systems. The rest I can do during normal maintenance shifts. Kyle adjusted something on his display, maintaining his appearance of performing basic tasks. "But that's not the best part." "Explain." "These engines, they're connected to everything. Weapons, shields, life support. It all runs on the same power network. Once we optimize the engines, we control their entire power grid." Hayes finished. "Excellent work, Roberts. Proceed with implementation. Command will want." An alarm blared through the engine room. Kyle's translator rendered the Crack's announcement. "All engineering personnel, prepare for emergency inspection. High command vessel approaching." "Understood," Hayes said quickly. "Maintain cover. Delete logs. We'll resume after inspection." Kyle closed his diagnostic displays and straightened his uniform. Across the engine room, The Crack's engineers scrambled to prepare for their superiors. None of them noticed the small smile on the human maintenance worker's face. The inspection team arrived with typical Crack's precision, their crystalline armor gleaming under the engine room lights. Kyle stood at attention with the other human auxiliaries as the high command officer surveyed their work. Engineering efficiency has improved in this sector, the officer noted, his translated voice carrying through the room. The human components are functioning adequately. They perform basic maintenance as instructed, the chief engineer replied. Their primitive understanding is sufficient for simple tasks. Kyle kept his face carefully blank. 6 months ago, that dismissal would have stung. Now it was their greatest advantage. The Cracks couldn't imagine that a primitive race could comprehend their technology, let alone improve it. The inspection concluded without incident. As the high command team departed, Kyle returned to his maintenance station. His fingers flew across the holographic controls, implementing changes that would look like normal system updates to the Cracks, but would fundamentally alter their engine's performance. Haze, he subvocalized once he was certain no one was watching. Tell Command that Project Overdrive is ready for Phase 2. These engines aren't just going to run better. They're going to help us take control of the entire fleet. Above him, the massive engine core pulsed with energy, its rhythm slightly altered by changes the Cracks would never think to look for. Their own protocols, their blind adherence to tradition, had become humanity's greatest weapon. Admiral Blake Davidson stood at perfect attention, playing the role of the token human advisor to the Cracks War Council. The massive chamber aboard the flagship, Supreme Dominion, sparkled with crystalline displays showing battle statistics from across the fleet. Before him, the Cracks High Command argued in their clicking language, their translator devices occasionally sparking with the intensity of their debate. These numbers cannot be correct, Supreme Commander Vexthar announced, his ceremonial armor reflecting the holographic data. Human units are showing survival rates exceeding our elite forces. Davidson kept his face carefully neutral, though his mind raced. They'd finally noticed, months later than any human commander would have, but still sooner than planned. Statistical anomaly, General Kexry dismissed, his high-pitched voice grating through the translators. Their primitive nature occasionally yields unexpected results through random chance. Junior Officer Kthex stepped forward, his lower rank evident in his simpler armor. Supreme Commander, I must report an observation. The human units have been conducting unauthorized combat drills during their rest periods. Their efficiency appears to be... Silence. Kexry interrupted. You dare suggest primitives could improve upon Crack's military doctrine? Doctrine perfected over millennia. Davidson watched Thex's mandibles twitch with frustration. The young officer had been watching the human units closely, too closely. Supreme Commander, the evidence suggests. The evidence suggests you need remedial training and proper military hierarchy. Vexthar cut in. Report to reconditioning immediately. We will not have our natural order questioned by imagination and paranoia. Davidson's modified neural implant buzzed softly, a message from Earth's hidden command structure. He subvocalized his acknowledgement while maintaining his pose of quiet subservience. The solution is obvious, Kexry declared. Deploy more human units to high-risk operations. Their unexpected survival rates will benefit our conquest, while proper Cracks forces are preserved for strategic engagements. A subtle smile touched Davidson's lips. They were playing directly into humanity's strategy. Every high-risk operation gave human forces more access to critical systems, more opportunities to gather intelligence, and implement changes. Admiral Davidson. Vexthar turned suddenly. You have served as our observer of human forces. Your assessment. Davidson bowed slightly, embracing the role of the grateful primitive. Supreme Commander, human forces are honored to serve the hegemony in whatever capacity you deem appropriate. Our survival rates merely reflect the excellence of Crack's training and technology. The flattery worked as expected. Vexthar's crystalline headpiece glowed with pride. Well spoken, for a primitive. Perhaps we should consider expanding human deployment to engineering and maintenance roles as well. Their simple minds seem well suited to repetitive tasks. A wise suggestion, Supreme Commander, Davidson replied, fighting to keep the triumph from his voice. Access to engineering systems was exactly what they needed to complete the next phase. After the council adjourned, Davidson made his way through the crystalline corridors, passing groups of Cracks officers who barely acknowledged his existence. His neural implant buzzed again, a priority message from Captain Hayes. Project Overdrive exceeded expectations, her voice whispered in his mind. Robert's engine modifications are being implemented fleet-wide. The Cracks engineers are authorizing the changes themselves, thinking they're routine updates. Excellent. Davidson turned down a less-traveled corridor. Status of Operation Ghost Protocol. 90% of human units are now running modified combat software. The Cracks think we're just struggling with their superior targeting systems. In reality, we're gathering combat data and adapting their own weapons to human reaction speeds. Davidson finished. Time estimate: 3 weeks until we reach critical mass. Sooner if they keep pushing us into frontline operations. Davidson reached his quarters, a sparse room befitting his role as a token advisor. Tell all units to maintain cover. Let them think their doctrine is perfect. Let them believe we're just lucky primitives. And if more officers like Cracks start noticing, their own hierarchy will silence them. Their greatest weakness isn't their technology. It's their inability to accept that they could be wrong. His neural implant buzzed one final time. Combat statistics showing human units inexplicably high success rates. Above him, the Cracks flagship hummed with power, its systems slowly being optimized by primitive human engineers. Soon, every ship in the fleet would be running on human innovations, protecting Cracks crews with human modifications, and fighting with weapons adapted to human reflexes. And their pride would blind them to the truth until it was far too late. Communications Officer Olivia Reynolds hunched over her modified console aboard the Cracks vessel Eternal Victory, her fingers dancing across holographic controls that had been subtly altered to match human ergonomics. To any observing Cracks, she was performing routine message routing. In reality, she was orchestrating a revolution. Package Echo 7 delivered. She subvocalized, her modified neural implant transmitting to the hidden human network. All ships in the Third Fleet have received the updates. Confirmed. Commander Nathan Mitchell's voice whispered in her mind. The Special Forces veteran had transformed mandatory religious services into strategic planning sessions. The Cracks, dismissing human spirituality as primitive superstition, never monitored these gatherings. Reynolds pulled up another communication stream, this one disguised as entertainment broadcasts for the human troops. Buried within the signal was a quantum-encrypted message from Earth's Resistance Command. Timeline accelerated. The message read, multiple Cracks junior officers raising concerns about human adaptation rates. Implement Operation Sundown within 72 hours. Her heart raced, but her hands remained steady. Commander Mitchell, you seeing this? Affirmative. A pause. How many ships have the modified engine protocols? Reynolds checked her secret diagnostics. 87% of the fleet. Kyle Roberts' improvements were too efficient for the Cracks to ignore. They're implementing them themselves, thinking they're routine optimization protocols. Weapons systems. 93% running our modified targeting software. The Cracks think their weapons are just performing better due to proper maintenance. They haven't realized we've adapted them to human reaction speeds. A new voice joined their secure channel, Major Sarah Wilson, their combat coordinator. Ground teams are ready. Every human soldier knows their role. We've masked our preparations as combat drills. Reynolds monitored the Cracks' communication channels while they spoke. The aliens' overconfidence extended to their encryption. They hadn't updated their codes in centuries, making them child's play for modern human cryptographers. Latest Cracks tactical update, she reported. They're increasing human deployment in critical operations. They think our survival rates are due to She allowed herself a small smile. Superior Cracks training methods. Perfect. Mitchell's satisfaction was evident. Status of the entertainment tablets. Reynolds switched displays. Distributed to 98% of human personnel. Each one contains a hidden quantum link to our command network. The Cracks dismissed them as primitive comfort devices. And the backup communications. In place. If they cut primary channels, we can coordinate through modified maintenance requests, entertainment broadcasts, or even equipment diagnostics. We've built redundancy into every system. Her console flashed. A Cracks officer approaching her station. Reynolds smoothly transitioned to legitimate communication duties as the crystalline armored figure passed. Time check, Mitchell prompted once the officer was gone. 36 hours until optimal position, Reynolds replied. The Cracks fleet will be executing their grand formation display. Every ship aligned perfectly. And every ship running our modified systems. Wilson finished. Maximum impact for minimum resistance. Reynolds intercepted another Cracks transmission. Commander, they're moving up the ceremony. The Supreme Commander wants to demonstrate their fleet's perfect coordination to newly conquered species. Can we accelerate? Her fingers flew across the holographic controls, running calculations. Yes, all human units are prepared. We just need the signal. What do you recommend? Mitchell asked. Reynolds thought of her background in telecommunications, the years spent studying signal propagation and network architecture. The Cracks communication network is their weakness. They value uniformity so much that every ship uses exactly the same frequencies, same protocols. One precisely timed signal could trigger everything simultaneously, Mitchell concluded. Perfect symmetry becoming perfect chaos. Very poetic. And they'll never see it coming, Wilson added. Their rigid minds can't conceive of their own systems being turned against them. Reynolds made a final adjustment to her hidden programs. All units are in position. Operation Sundown is ready for implementation. We just need the go-ahead from Admiral Davidson. Her console displayed the Cracks fleet movements. Thousands of ships preparing to demonstrate their perfect, unchanging discipline. None of them realizing that their formation would become the stage for their own defeat. Prepare the signal, Mitchell ordered. When the time comes, we'll show them why humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our numbers. It's our ability to adapt, Reynolds finished, her fingers poised over the controls that would help liberate humanity. And they gave us everything we needed to prove it. Master Sergeant Tyler Brooks stood at attention in the grand observation deck of the Cracks flagship, Supreme Dominion, his voice steady as he sang the first notes of the Star-Spangled Banner. Around him, other human soldiers joined in, their voices rising in what the Cracks had dismissed as a primitive cultural ritual before their grand fleet demonstration. The alien commanders ignored the singing, focused on their dramatic formation display. Thousands of ships moved in perfect synchronization, a testament to their unchanging military doctrine. They never noticed how the humans' voices carried through every communication channel simultaneously, a signal hidden in plain sight. Communications disruption detected. A Cracks officer announced suddenly. Source unknown. The lights flickered. Throughout the fleet, thousands of modified systems activated at once. Kyle Roberts' engine optimizations surged into overdrive, overwhelming the original Cracks power protocols. Combat engineer Ashley Cooper's targeting modifications came online, their weapons suddenly calibrated to human response times. By the dawn's early light, Brooks continued singing, his neural implant connecting him to the Revolution's command network. Across the fleet, human soldiers moved with practiced precision, their positions carefully planned during months of religious gatherings. Marine Scout sniper Rachel Martinez watched through her modified scope as chaos erupted in the Cracks command center. The aliens' crystalline armor, so perfect for their ceremonial formation, sparkled with emergency lights. Target acquired. She subvocalized, her position in the maintenance shaft perfect for the impossible shot the Cracks targeting systems had declared beyond physical limitations. Executing. Her modified rifle hummed. The shot passed through gaps in the cracks formation that their rigid tactical doctrine claimed couldn't be exploited. The command center's shield generator exploded with surgical precision. The rocket's red glare, Brooks' voice carried through the fleet's speakers as Olivia Reynolds' communication backdoors activated. Every screen, every holographic display, showed the same message. For Earth. Admiral Davidson's voice cut through the chaos. All units, execute Operation Sundown. Human soldiers across the fleet sprang into action. Their primitive modifications to Crack's technology revealed their true purpose. Weapons turned against their masters. Engines responded to human commands. Security systems accepted override codes hidden in maintenance updates. Multiple system failures, a Crack's commander shouted. The primitives. They've altered our technology. Lieutenant Jessica Thompson led her squad through the corridors of the Eternal Victory, their movements exploiting blind spots in Crack's tactical doctrine. They gave us their weapons, she called out, her modified plasma rifle cutting through Crack's defenses, taught us their systems. Never thought we'd improve them. The Cracks tried to respond with their traditional battle formations, but centuries of unchanging doctrine had left them unable to adapt. Their perfect synchronization became a weakness as human forces disrupted their carefully planned responses. The ramparts we watched, Brooks continued, the song becoming a battle hymn across the fleet. In engineering sections, Kyle Roberts' engine modifications reached critical efficiency. Power surged through human-optimized systems, overwhelming the original Cracks protocols. Their shields are linked to Central Command. Reynolds' voice echoed through the neural network. Synchronizing disruption in 3, 2, 1. Across the fleet, Crack's shields flickered and died. Their vaunted technology, modified by primitive human engineers, turned against them. Emergency systems activated according to protocols written millennia ago, exactly as humanity had predicted. And the home of the brave. Brooks finished as the last notes of the anthem echoed through suddenly silent ships. In the space of one song, humanity had seized control of the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Admiral Davidson stepped forward, his voice carrying through every command channel. Supreme Commander Vexthar, your fleet is now under human control. Your choice is simple: surrender or watch your perfect formation tear itself apart. The Crack's commander stared in disbelief at displays, showing thousands of ships, their systems running on human-modified protocols. Impossible. You're primitives. You couldn't comprehend our technology. No, Davidson corrected. We're humans. We don't just comprehend technology. We improve it. You wanted soldiers. Instead, you armed and trained your own replacements. Around them, the magnificent Cracks fleet hung in space, its perfect formation now a prison of their own design. Their greatest triumph had become the stage for their greatest defeat, undone by the very primitives they had sought to exploit. General Amanda Foster stood on the bridge of the captured Cracks flagship, now renamed Humanity's Dawn, watching the Supreme Commander's delegation approach through the reformed docking protocols. The massive chamber, once decorated with Cracks victory symbols, now displayed a careful blend of human and alien technology, a visible reminder of how humanity had transformed their captors' greatest weapons. Engineering report, Mr. Roberts, she called out, keeping her eyes on the approaching delegation. Kyle Roberts looked up from his modified console, his former NASCAR jacket now adorned with military insignia. The fleet's running at 97% efficiency, General. These engines purr better than any NASCAR vehicle I've ever worked on. The Cracks still can't believe we improved their perfect systems. They're about to believe a lot of things they never thought possible, Foster replied as the airlock cycled. Supreme Commander Vexthar entered with his remaining High Council, their crystalline armor dimmed in defeat. The Cracks leaders had spent 3 days verifying that their entire fleet now ran on human-modified systems before agreeing to this meeting. The terms of surrender are prepared, Foster stated without preamble. But first, I believe you have questions. Vexthar's translator crackled. How? Our technology was perfected over millennia. Our doctrine was flawless. That was your first mistake. Foster gestured to the assembled human crew. You see a NASCAR mechanic who improved your engines, a communications officer who rewrote your networks, a Marine sniper who proved your targeting limitations. You gave us everything we needed to surpass you. Impossible, General Kexry interrupted. You were primitives, savages. Lieutenant Jessica Thompson stepped forward, her modified combat armor now a testament to human innovation. You taught us that our greatest strength wasn't our technology, it was our ability to adapt. Every mission you sent us on became a learning opportunity. Every piece of outdated equipment became a chance to innovate. Foster's tablet chimed with an incoming message from Kyle Roberts. She allowed herself a small smile as she read it. Your engineers just finished their analysis of our modifications. Would you like to know what they found? The Cracks leaders shifted uncomfortably. Foster continued. Your engine efficiency can be improved by another 40%. Your weapon systems can be optimized beyond anything you imagined. Your communication networks can be expanded to incorporate frequencies you thought unusable. And you would share these improvements. Vexthar asked, mandibles clicking in surprise. That's our second proposal, Foster replied. After independence and recognition as equals, we offer technological cooperation. Humanity doesn't seek revenge. We seek partnership. She nodded to Communications Officer Reynolds, who displayed a holographic star chart. Your empire spans thousands of worlds, but you've stopped exploring, stopped innovating. You've forgotten how to adapt. And you would teach us. The question came from Junior Officer Kthex, the one who had first noticed human innovations. We would learn together, Foster corrected. Your civilization has achieved incredible things, but progress requires change, adaptation, evolution. That's what humanity offers, not just technological improvements, but a reminder of how to embrace change itself. The star chart zoomed out, showing unexplored regions of space. There are threats out there you've never imagined. Foster continued. Challenges that can't be overcome with unchanging doctrine. The galaxy needs both our strengths, your established knowledge and our adaptability. Supreme Commander Vexthar studied the displays showing human modifications to their technology. Our hierarchy, our traditions, can evolve without being destroyed, Foster finished. Just as we improved your technology while maintaining its core functions. Change doesn't mean losing who you are. It means becoming more than you were. The Cracks leaders conferred briefly in their native language. Finally, Vexthar stepped forward. We accept your terms, both independence and partnership. Foster extended her hand, a human gesture the Cracks had once dismissed as primitive. After a moment's hesitation, Vexthar grasped it with his crystalline gauntlet. Welcome to a new era, Foster declared. One where humanity's greatest victory isn't defeating you, it's showing you how to grow again. Above them, the combined fleet hung in space, its ships now running on systems that represented the best of both civilizations. The Cracks had wanted soldiers and found teachers instead. They had sought to exploit humanity's capacity for warfare, only to discover humanity's true strength, the ability to transform not just themselves, but everyone around them.